Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, we're still in this strange situation of expecting a U.S. attack, not exactly knowing what the reason for it is or what the goals the U.S. is planning to accomplish, and what exactly would stop a U.S. attack, if indeed a U.S. attack is being planned. So we're in the we're in this strange situation of discussing, the time of the game, because it's a serious situation, discussing of an issue in which almost all of the parameters are unknown. And that is very, very odd because, if there's a conflict, we actually know, well, what's the conflict about? What goals does one side hope to achieve? And therefore, what minimal goals will it accept in order not to take military action? So, we're not able really to answer any of those questions.
Well,
And
along those lines, George, I mean, obviously we are keeping a very close eye on it. Outside of the administration's propagandists and the long list of historical Iran haters, smart people are asking exactly what you're saying
right,
here,
right,
and this
right,
is across the board.
right,
This is
right,
across the board.
across the board. Um, though curiously enough, and I think this is a very striking feature of what's happening, is that there's almost no anti-war movement. There's no almost no pressure being applied against the administration, and this is an administration not exactly popular among liberals and among the mainstream media, but the mainstream media really simply just take it as axiomatic
And they're just
that the
observers.
United States can, whenever it feels like, wield a military force against Iran. But doesn't even have to justify it; just simply do it, because self-evidently, Iran is a worthy target. Just by its being there,
Well,
it is a worthy target.
let's go back to last week and Mark Carney's kind of a famous fake speech.
Fake.
Yeah, I mean, you could take a couple lines out of it and say, oh yeah, it was a complete fraud from from the very beginning, and that's where the ones that people are picking up on that. But if you look at its entirety, it's pretty hypocritical. Where was his word saying, well, what is the legal basis, moral basis, power basis? For attacking Iran. That was on the agenda last week. It just suddenly didn't appear. He had nothing to say about it.
Right. No, that's very true. And I think it's very important also to mention that yesterday the European Union, as always, eager to lend a helping hand to President Trump, whom they were reviling last week. They came out, imposed sanctions on a variety of Iranian leaders, and they chimed in and echoed the U.S. position that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is a terrorist organization. They were very pleased with themselves, so they
Yeah,
made that announcement.
yeah.
Conveniently timed. Right at the very moment that the U.S. has put all its forces into the region. Oh, let's put our two bits
Yeah.
worth in.
Real courageous, George. Yeah, he
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah. Of course,
courageous.
yeah, and of course, it echoes what happened last June when, again, it was obviously the expectation that the United States and Israel would attack, and then along came the IAEA to say, "Oh, Iran is in violation of all its commitments. It's in violation of all of the promises it had made under the
That's like
JC."
that's like hitting a sound drop on your computer, you
That's
know?
it. Yes, and then the E3, which is the European branch of the JCPOA, said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. Iran is in very serious
And,
violation
and
of its
what
commitments."
what reward are they expecting for this courage?
Yes, and let's not forget that last week they were screaming, banging their fist on the table about Greenland. Greenland, for God's sake. The territorial integrity, the sovereignty of Greenland, the territorial integrity, sovereignty of Denmark is in jeopardy, is threatened. And here they are, apparently. Well, if we're going to hit Iran, let's
Well, what
do
they
it.
want, they just want a front row seat and watch. That's what
Right,
they want.
right.
Okay.
That's right. So anyway, Trump was asked yesterday when he went off to this the screening of this movie about Melania.
Not
Anyway,
doing well. It's not doing.
I don't know. No, I'm not going to watch it. I don't think.
It's
Anyway,
not
here.
on my. It's not on my bingo card. Yeah.
No, no. Anyway, here he is.
With Iran in the last few days, and are you planning on it?
I have had, and I am planning on it. Yeah, we have a lot of very big, very powerful ships sailing to Iran right now, and it would be great if we didn't have to use them.
Can you say what the message was that you shared with Iranians?
Well, I told them two things. Number one, no nuclear, and number two, stop killing protesters. They're killing them by the thousands.
Oh, that's back on the agenda. Oh, okay.
37 hangings 2 weeks.
So it's now 837. So last week was 800. So you've added 37 hangings that was stopped. Something that never happened, but you've now added a number to something that never happened. That's a magic kind of arithmetic, when you're adding numbers to something that never happened. So uh,
But they're going to have to do something.
all right. So now what's interesting here is that what Trump is doing, and I think this is a when we look at try to figure out what's going on, is he's putting forward two distinct strands. He's the whole nuclear thing, and that involves enrichment, ballistic missiles, and then he's doing the protesters because what's really happening is they want to um, attack while there is an uprising of sorts taking place in Iran. So that's they're trying to do this kind of thing to have the two events coinciding with each other. So it's a familiar kind of regime change.
Right to protect. Right to
Right to
protect.
protect, exactly. That's what they did in Libya, and of course before that, they did that in Yugoslavia when they used the Kosovo Liberation Army to stage an uprising, and then they could, cry, "Oh, horrific atrocities are being committed against the Albanians. We have to come in and save the Albanians." So obviously something of that nature is being planned here. So remember, this was the truth that he had sent out, and we talked about this the other day, and where he made that threat, which is the no nuclear weapons, and time is running out. It is truly of the essence. As I told Iran once before, make a deal, and they didn't, and then we had the midnight hammer, and then the next attack will be far worse. Don't make that happen again. But of course, as we discussed on Wednesday, the issue was, well, what's the deal? What are you talking about? Because before you had a very limited deal, which was the enrichment. No nuclear enrichment. Now, of course, the deal seems to be much more all-encompassing.
Yeah, it would appear that the Iranians don't know what the deal is.
Right. That's which makes negotiation particularly difficult.
Tough, a bit tough.
Um, anyway, this was the New York Times story, about Trump's threats, and then the Times raised this very issue, which is, well, Mr. Trump gave no specifics about the deal he was demanding, saying only that a massive armada was heading towards Iran and that the country should make a deal. But US and European officials say that in talks, they have put three demands in front of the Iranians: a permanent end to all enrichment of uranium, limits on the range and number of their ballistic missiles, and an end to all support for proxy groups in the Middle East, including Hamas and Hezbollah.
Well, none of this is new.
None of this is new, and of course, it's a more or less a demand for complete surrender.
Surrender.
As all enrichment of uranium, that's already a big demand. But if you tell them limits on the range and the number of their ballistic missiles, that means Iran no longer has any means of defending itself. That I think is, I mean, in circumstances in which two nuclear powers have already attacked you, have made clear that they have every intention of attacking you again and continuing to attack you, not to have any means to retaliate. I mean, what is that? That's unconditional surrender. So it's a demand. I mean, how can you put that forward? Oh, we'll come to a deal. I mean, you're demanding unconditional surrender. That's not a deal. So,
Okay.
leave aside the proxy groups. Okay, that may be less important. But the ballistic missiles, that is absolutely crucial. I mean, I don't think how Iran can
Well, yeah.
wait.
This is it's not an open declaration of war, but this is a declaration of war. These are our conditions. You do not fulfill them, and there will be kinetic action against you. Well, they're not going to agree to any of these things
No,
here, so
no.
we should expect it. Or it's just this is an elaborate negotiating tactic. Okay, I'm really kind of tired of that. Okay, and it doesn't work for me. I mean, I think it has to be reiterated here before the what we call now the 12-day war. The Iranians were negotiating with the United States. Okay, and the United States. It's very much akin to the negotiations that the Americans and the Japanese were involved in November and December of 1941.
Right,
Okay. And
right,
it was a sudden attack during times of negotiation. So the United States, if we use the historical analogy, is Japan.
right, right, right. Um, that's right. Um, but there is a slight difference there. I mean, Japan was under an oil blockade.
Yeah, yeah.
A
Oh,
blockade,
I'm not
blockade
saying
is an
there
act
was
of
no
war. So
cause.
yeah, I mean that
I'm
was
not saying there was no cause.
right.
Okay, I know the Japanese position very, very well, and we might do a video on it to remind people. Okay, but my point is that when Trump's saying negotiations, well, we've been there before, and
Right. Yeah.
for it
Yep.
was all a facade. So I mean,
No, I think that's true.
this is not a deal; it's an ultimatum.
Exactly, exactly. That's the point.
Okay,
It's an ultimatum.
and if it's a deal, what do the Iranians get out of it? I
Nothing.
mean,
They,
okay, no nuclear program, no missiles, and no supporting of proxies. For that, we will give you a non-aggression pact.
they're not saying. They're not even offering that.
That's what I'm saying. That
Russia.
would be a deal.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
But
That's a very good point.
the Iran gets nothing out of the so-called deal.
Right. No, that's a very good point. All Iran would get out of this is a promise that this time we are not going to hit you. Just this time. Doesn't mean we're not going to hit you in 3 months' time or 6 months' time. Just we won't hit you now. That's the definition of ultimatum.
3 months from now is that give your Kurds local autonomy, and we won't.
Exactly. 3 months now, we could give you exactly any demands we like. We can make in 3 months' time, whether it's the Kurds or the Balukis or anything like that. You've got to change your laws relating to women. That's it. That's our new demand. That we don't like the way the laws that you have and the way you treat
And
women.
then you have to ban the Quran.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway,
Yeah, whatever.
so here's the Jerusalem Post. Obviously not a particularly pro-Iranian outlet. But here it says one of the challenges facing President Trump in deciding how to strike is the fact that protests have significantly diminished after weeks of murder by the regime inside Iran. So that is a problem, and I think that's clearly what they are now trying to rectify the problem, and which is why it was interesting that Trump should have raised that issue just yesterday. Oh, they have to do because most media outlets have reported that there are no more of the protests.
Yeah, I mean,
So he's suddenly bringing up, oh, they have to stop doing this to the protesters.
If I can use it in my current context, I thought that was yesterday's snow.
That's right, exactly. And then he says, as the days progress, the U.S. continues to deploy significant force in the Middle East. And then we have the Abraham Lincoln is in the region. And then one of the challenges facing President Trump in deciding how to strike is the fact that protests have significantly diminished. And then goes on, this raises a key question. Is there an action that could lead to the fall of the regime, even in the absence of public demonstrations? According to reports, President Trump has requested a focused and meaningful operation, an indication that he has no desire to become embroiled in prolonged warfare. And of course, no boots on the ground. Among the options under consideration is striking Basir facilities and individuals who ordered the killings of the brutal suppression of protests. But of course, none of that by themselves would do regime change. I mean, it's like saying, well, hey, how do we do regime change? And that's why they have to get something, some riots on the ground. So clearly, that was the plan when they launched the program of the riots, but something went wrong. Obviously, they just didn't have enough hardware in place, and they couldn't launch the attack at that moment. So now they said, okay, well, now we've got the hardware, but we don't have the riots. So that's where the problem has arisen.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm missing something. This is the Jerusalem Post, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, okay. I don't get that. Among the other options under consideration, this is assuming that Iran just sits there and watches.
Well, that's an interesting question, of course, because
not with one hand tied behind both hands tied behind their back.
That's it. Well, that's it. That's the real issue, because what would Iran be able to do? I mean, we don't know at this stage. I mean, obviously, Iran will retaliate. I mean, the issue of how effective that retaliation is, I mean, that's still, that's an open question. But yeah, Iran will retaliate.
Well, this is all the makings of a preemptive attack. So, what is the strategic thinking? Because we have to do it now. Why now?
Yeah.
Because of Iran's long-range missile program. Maybe, unfortunately for Iran, they seem to have a problem of keeping secrets to themselves. Do the Israelis know that? And George and I are not military people, but a new and improved ballistic missile is being moved into operation. What I'm saying is that it seems to me the imperative is something has to be done soon, because we can't finish.
We don't exactly, because, but that was the same issue in June. What was the rush? There were negotiations taking place. Okay, that was a ruse, but nonetheless, what was the rush to do it in June?
And using that example here, that there are different things in play right here. Enrichment, obviously, that Iran was sending the message that they go along the fuel cycle, that they will have the kind of material they will need to make a warhead. Okay, but that's separate from Iran's long-range missile system. Okay, they're not intimately, at least they're not connected.
No, exactly.
Now. And lastly, as the former slide had to say, these surrogate groups are kind of immaterial right now. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. They are immaterial. No, I think the crucial thing here is the ballistic missiles, because the ballistic missiles enable Iran to retaliate. And they showed last June that they were able to retaliate, and they weren't as damaging as Israel's attacks on Iran, because Israel managed to take out people and some hardware,
a prison.
Yeah, that's right. But Iran, they were able to hit Tel Aviv, so they were able to show that that giant dome that Israel is secure. Israel was not secure. And the people of Tel Aviv, they're not used to being bombed. I mean, that was the shock of last June. Hey, we're getting bombed. We used to enjoy our nice, comfortable lives in Tel Aviv, and everything that was going on elsewhere. We didn't have to worry about that. Suddenly,
Los Angeles on the Mediterranean,
Right, exactly. And then suddenly
the
we can.
safe haven of Jews in the world.
That's
Okay,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what caused the shock. Anyway, here is again the Jerusalem Post. He says the administration is examining the possibility of imposing a naval blockade on Iran that would prevent it from exporting oil. President Trump took a similar step against the Maduro regime in Venezuela, and a few weeks later launched an operation aimed at capturing President Maduro and
Well,
his
there's a
wife.
big problem with that
Well,
because
yeah, go on.
well, Chinese naval forces will escort their tankers in and out. And do you want to go? Is the Americans going to shoot on a Chinese
No,
ship?
that's right. That's right. There's no other question. I mean, a blockade is an
An
act of
act of
war.
war.
Is an act of war, and preventing China from getting oil. That's a very serious step. And one obvious consequence of going down that path is China would then consider that the United States is now pretty much in a state of war against China, and therefore China will do what it has hesitated to do. I think it will then throw in its weight behind Russia and the war in Ukraine. I mean, China hasn't really done that. China has sort of been, taking a kind of a more or less a hands-off approach. I think at that moment, I think China will cease to take a hands-off approach. Or go, hey, we're in an existential fight against the
Well,
United States. So I think that they would and absolutely would take a naval blockade around the prevention, because the goal of this would be to prevent China from getting oil. China would then regard it as this: we are now in an existential war of survival against the United States.
exactly. It'd be crossing the Rubicon. Okay, because it's existential. It's existential to their existence. They would have no other choice to do that. Okay, and it would be Donald Trump that is doing the escalating. The Chinese would have to rise to the occasion, and you don't want war naval assets
Right.
in a very tight geographical area. Okay, that's not what you want to
No,
do,
no,
everyone.
that's right.
That is really. And then what happens when Iranian missiles start flying around in the air? I mean, this is a recipe for disaster for everybody concerned.
Yeah, no, I agree. Anyway, here is the New York Times. This is today, which says Trump weighs new military options against Iran. And he says the plans being weighed by the president go beyond those he considered weeks ago amid widespread protests against Iran's government. President Trump has been presented in recent days with an expanded list of potential military options against Iran, and then aimed at doing further damage to the country's nuclear and missile facilities or weakening Iran's supreme leader.
That's an interesting week. In what way?
No, that's right. Well, they don't really know.
It would be probably just the opposite, strengthening the supreme leader.
Well, that's really the issue here, which is because so much of this kind of talk, well, let's have the protests, and will coincide the attacks with the protest. But if the country is under attack, I don't think that people are going to go out into the streets, rioting against the Iran's leaders because, hey, we're under attack by the United States. So that doesn't make sense. That doesn't work.
You're not going to go out and loot a liquor store, okay, when you're under
Right, right. So here says the current set of options even includes the potential for American forces to carry out raids on sites inside Iran. And then he comes in a different context. Now the protests have been brutally quashed, at least for the time being. Mr. Trump has not yet authorized military action or chosen among the options presented by the Pentagon. The president remains open to finding a diplomatic solution. Some officials acknowledge that telegraphing the threats of military action was intended to drive the Iranians into a negotiation. So again, this is the thing, oh well, we we're going to bomb them to or threaten to bomb them to the negotiation table. It doesn't really work.
Yeah, the New York Times, they're unprincipled. They're against this administration. Blah 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 blah. All these things here. But look at this. I mean, they're just carrying water. It's carrying water. I mean, this is. This is almost to the point of being infantile.
Right. No, right.
Okay,
That's right.
intended to drive the Iranians to the into negotiation. There's no drive for negotiations here.
That's
You want them to surrender. Why don't you say it, New York
exactly.
Times?
Exactly. And as you said, a few minutes ago, they were negotiating. They have never said we're not going to negotiate. So so we were negotiating. We scheduled whatever it was, a sixth round of talks with Steve Witkoff in Oman. It was all scheduled before you attacked. Among the riskiest, these are the options that they're discussing. Among the riskiest would involve secretly sending in U.S. commandos to destroy or badly damage parts of the Iranian nuclear program, not already damaged in U.S. bombing last June. And then American forces have long practiced for specialized missions, such as going into countries like Iran to target nuclear sites or other high-value targets.
And all the while, as these commandos are doing what they do, Iran is going to do what?
Well, or presumably it's going to be clandestine, so they won't know about this. But of course, if they do find out, and then they kill these
Okay.
Americans,
Well, I mean,
then you've got a kind of an embarrassing
yeah.
situation on your hands.
But we don't know the full story, but common sense would dictate that Maduro was taken under conditions in where he was sold out.
Yep,
Okay.
that's right. Well,
Okay.
that's that.
Are you going to assume that this is going to be the case in Iran? I wouldn't put any money on that.
Well, you never know. I mean, there may be
You
some.
you, you never you
Yeah,
never
I
know. You
mean,
never know.
people are always wormy, treacherous creatures in almost any setup. So you can, clearly Iran has been infiltrated. We know Iran has been infiltrated. I mean, Israel has been able to attack leaders in Iran. How were they able to determine where somebody would be other than basically there are informers within Iran's ruling circles? So that's a possibility. That doesn't mean that that they will be able to achieve regime change. They won't, or that somebody is going to be able to affect. I mean, even if, let's say, they kill Khamenei, that's possible. They're going to try and kill Khamenei. I, I don't know how do we get from that to the collapse of the regime? Is Khamenei really? Does everything revolve around him? I don't think so.
Nope.
It never
Nope.
has. I mean, he
Nope.
doesn't. He's never had the authority that that Ayatollah Khomeini had. So he's never been in that position. So I don't think it would make very much of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand in our many conversations with Professor Morandi, he is a spiritual leader,
Right.
okay,
Right.
and has a lot of discretion. But
Right.
when it comes to military and security issues,
Yeah.
that's a council.
Yeah.
That's done. It's very much a collective. I suppose if he, really puts his foot down on something, people are going to listen to him. But no, this is the myopic view the West has of Iran,
Right.
okay? I mean, for goodness sake, everyone, this is a very sophisticated, millennia-long civilization,
Right.
okay? But I did, so this will be done clandestinely. So someone's going to turn off the radar and they're going
Right.
to fly. Iran is about the size of Europe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and ask, you can't directly, but maybe, think of what Jimmy Carter went through.
Right. Right. No. Yes. Um.
George, maybe I'm just reading this wrong, but I mean, this is just flat out propaganda.
Well, it is. Well, I mean, the
I mean,
purpose,
they're
obviously.
writing this because the administration told them to.
Yes. I mean, obviously, these are threats. I mean, the whole purpose of these kinds of articles is to threaten Iran, to make them afraid, and to make them, hey, yeah, we're ready to do whatever you want because, hey, look at all the different things that we can do. Hey, we can send in some commandos. And you wouldn't even know anything about it. They would just go in and sabotage you.
Yeah,
So
but I
I think
mean,
obviously the goal is to threaten, intimidate. The
But you don't, George, you don't have to threaten and you don't have to intimidate. Why? Because the United States has already attacked Iran.
well, it's
I mean,
already attacked Iran,
the mask is off.
but of course the interesting thing here, and this is where the New York Times and of course the mainstream media never really get into the to this serious discussion. It's very and deliberately so, which is, well, why is the United States doing this? Now, the ostensible reason in the past has been, well, no nuclear weapons, no nuclear weapons. Well, Iran was willing to negotiate with that. I mean, obviously they came to an agreement with the Obama administration, but now you're going much beyond or any of the talk about nuclear weapons, and they've kind of seamlessly, essentially
Moving the goalpost.
transfer
Yeah.
the concern to a discussion which is now explicitly that the United States wants to change the regime in Tehran. But then you have to say, well, why is the United States doing this? I mean, you've managed to live with this country for was it now 46 years? So what's the urgency? Why are you doing this? And then, of course, it brings up the issue of Israel. You are doing the work of Israel because it's only Israel that is so agitated about Iran. So there's no real explanation as to why the United States is doing this, or of course, obviously, well, what's the urgency in having to do this now?
Well, and one answer to that is the perception that Iran has an effective deterrent now because of its missile program, not any kind of nuclear. And they've shown that they can at the very least give Israel a bloody nose with the technology and assets they have right now. They're only going to get better and better. And again, as George pointed out, if there's going to be this ridiculous talk of a blockade, what do you bet that the Russians and the Chinese are going to give them top drawer stuff now?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
and plus, it's not widely known, but behind closed doors, the Russians said after the 12-day war, you should have listened to us. Okay, you should have listened because no, we can do it on our own. Well, it's good to have powerful friends,
Yeah.
particularly in this era of Trump.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah. Yeah. And then it says another option would be a series of strikes against military and other leadership targets that would cause such turmoil that it could create the conditions on the ground for Iranian security forces or other forces to remove the 86-year-old leader Khamenei. Now, this is where it gets very interesting because if, let's say, the Iranian security forces remove Khamenei, why would they do it to serve the interests of the United States? I mean, they might well decide to the contrary that, I think Khamenei is very soft. I think he's been much too soft. I think he's been much too conciliatory. They might decide, you know what, we need to take over in order to have a much stronger, a much more vigorously anti-American government than the one under Khamenei. So the idea that these security forces would remove Khamenei and then install a pro-American government, that seems to be a really unlikely option.
I don't really removing him. I don't, you can sideline him. You don't have to remove
Yeah, I
him.
think so. Exactly. You can just sideline it. Absolutely right. Sideline him, because I mean, he's 86 years old. I mean, by all accounts, he seems to be out of the daily decision making, which you would expect given his age. So the security questions would be made by Iran, but presumably the issue, which is Iran, it was Khamenei who made the decision not for Iran not to develop nuclear weapons.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think it was a great idea, but nonetheless, it was Khamenei who said that this is not compatible with Islamic teaching and whatever. I'm quite sure that the security forces think, yeah, we should have nuclear weapons, and that would make
Yes, they
sense.
should.
You need nuclear weapons to survive.
They should have them.
Yes.
Okay. Or whether any successor would be more open to dealing with the United States. What more open? I mean, again, that's assuming that there's a negotiation here.
Right.
This is an ultimatum.
Exactly. Exactly. That's absolutely right. And then Israel is pressing for a third option. Oh, I'm so happy that Israel is pressing for an option. It wants the United States to join it in restriking Iran's ballistic missile program, which intelligence officials say Iran has largely rebuilt since Israel devastated the program in the 12-day
That,
war.
that's that's my reasoning. They see their overwhelming threat of force diminishing because of Iran's ballistic missile program.
Okay, that certainly makes sense, but you still have
Yeah,
the
but I mean, but why does the United States have to be involved in that?
first
The
of all, yeah,
Iranian
exactly.
missiles are
Why
not
does the
going
United
to.
States? The second problem is, okay, you can hit the ballistic missile program again, and then what? Then you're going
Yeah.
to have to come back and do it again in 6 months' time. That probably will be even more. It'll be more difficult. I mean, you're not going to be able to accomplish anything. But all right, so you can hit these things. They will be rebuilt. I mean, that's just the way of it. They are going to rebuild the program for the obvious reason that they need the ballistic missiles to defend themselves. So therefore, you're not going to accomplish anything other than a temporary respite, and then you're going to have to do the same thing again in a few months' time.
But why would Iran allow that scenario to play out when it will say, look, I mean, we can do it now. If there's action against us, we can meet it and overcome it while they think we may have an edge, or wait while through time that they lose their edge. I mean, this is the timing, you know. I mean, the why would the Iranians say, you know, okay, we can take a hit, we can take another hit? Why would you? I
No,
mean,
I don't think they would. And if they were, if it's true that they were able to rebuild it in 6 months, then they have a considerable capability, and therefore I'm quite sure that they'll be able to rebuild it next time within 3, 4 months. So you're not going to solve any problems thereby, and presumably they would harden their missile sites to make sure that they weren't so vulnerable. But you're right. They could absolutely not sit on their hands now and use these ballistic missiles to hit targets immediately. Targets, obviously, they've said we're going to hit Tel Aviv. I mean, this is they've made that clear. If the United States attacks, we will hit Tel Aviv. I mean, they've said this.
yeah, well, yeah, and, they have to hit Tel Aviv because this is where the command structure is for the IDF. They put it under shopping centers and
Right,
things like this. I mean, talk about human shields.
right.
You know,
That's right.
woo.
That's right. So here then is Reuters, and it says Trump weighs Iran strikes to inspire renewed protests. So that's
Oh,
their
now,
position.
oh, the plot
So
thickens.
it's the
Yeah.
renewed protest, and this is where I do find I do find that an unlikely scenario. Yes, I'm sure they have the CIA, Mossad paid agents who, and if you tell them, boom, go out there and do what you did before, start burning buildings, burning buses, burning people alive, they'll do it. But they're not going to enjoy any widespread support. So it's not going to, it's not going to shake up the government just because you're going to get some CIA Mossad agents going out burning buildings. But that obviously I think that probably is the scenario that they have in mind, so that we can tell the world, hey, the reason we're doing this is that, well, it's Iran's nuclear program, but we're doing a humanitarian intervention. We're doing what Tony Blair did in Yugoslavia. We're doing what Obama did in Libya. We're just humanitarians. We just love the Iranian people.
It's really amazing. You've already mentioned it, but it's worth reiterating. Where's the outrage
Yep.
in Europe?
Right.
Okay. In Canada, in
Europe.
Australia, huh? Where's the outrage?
That's right.
I
Where's
thought
yeah,
your values-based order.
the
That's what you
values?
want.
Values, yes.
Mark, Mark Carney, you are a hypocrite to high heaven. I mean, so these are your values.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Exactly.
They're no better than your rules.
That's
Okay.
right. And and that's why it's important to remember. Only yesterday, the Europeans had an emergency meeting of the European foreign ministers, and they agreed. They agreed. Yeah, we need to impose sanctions against Iran. Just hey, Mr. President, we're doing what you wanted us to do. Well done, well done. Yeah, this after last week's hysteria
Yeah.
about Greenland.
An extra scoop of ice cream for you.
That's right. 55,000 people in Greenland who enjoy, live very nicely there, enjoying all the welfare benefits of Denmark.
You know what their biggest industry is, George? Fishing.
That's right.
Just go out. Let's go out and have some.
Yeah, exactly.
Fishing is a pretty cool.
Yeah, that's right. So that's
it's a hard job, but it's solitude and it's
That's right.
pretty and it's a good gig. Okay.
Very good. Yeah, and you remember the Americans are just offering to give them just a lot of money. Here's some pocket change for every single resident of Greenland. So that's 55,000, and they were hysterical about that. Iran's a country of more than 90 million. That you don't seem to care much about. Anyway, here is the Reuters story. President Trump is weighing options against Iran that includes targeted strike on security forces and leaders to inspire protesters. And then says, even as Israeli and Arab officials said air power alone would not topple the clerical rulers. But I like the way they put Israeli and Arab officials. Arab officials are saying something. Israel is saying, hey, you got to do more. Arab officials say, hey, this is a really bad idea. Don't do it.
Again, this is how propaganda works. George is absolutely right. Even as Israeli and Arab officials, they're taking very different positions, right. But what Reuters says is they put them
together as if there's there's a consensus. It's a good idea to bomb, but you need to add something to it. As if the Arabs are saying, yeah, I think you should add something to the mix. Bombing isn't enough.
What do you bet that Reuters, the Iran desk, the Israel desk, the Gulf desk? I mean, it's very curated every time they report. It's very, very curated. It's very different when they talk about other areas. But it seems that, it's like, don't, nothing goes out until the boss season. Okay.
Yes. Two U.S. sources familiar with the discussion said Trump wanted to create conditions for regime change after a crackdown crushed the nationwide protest movement earlier this month, killing thousands of people.
So this is a humanitarian operation.
Exactly. So this is the humanitarian intervention. To do so, he was looking at options to hit commanders and institutions Washington holds responsible for the violence. Oh, because hey, this guy, he's responsible for the violence. Let's kill him.
Okay. Well, then the same logic would apply to the head of ICE.
Well, that's right. But the thing is that, let's say he's the commander. This guy, he's the defense minister. Well, let's kill him. Fantastic. Okay, so then the deputy defense minister takes over. Well, let's kill him too. Okay, then
his deputy takes over.
Then his deputy or the chief of staff then takes over. Well, let's kill him too. Well, then you're really just carrying out a slaughter and not really accomplishing anything very much in this. So the idea, we're going to hit people who are responsible for violence, that's not going to get you anywhere. You're going to just have to keep killing one person after another. There's still going to be somebody who is going to take over. I mean, that's the nature of society. There's always going to be somebody, the next man in, who's going to take over.
George, what you're thinking on this is that one of the things I keep going back to is that this whole timing issue is that the Israelis may never get someone like Trump again. And, and this has been, and for Netanyahu, this has been his, two things, never having, and never the creation of a Palestinian state, and to take on the final foe in the region is Iran. And they have a president in the Oval Office that is willing to do this. I think that's part of the rush. Okay, I mean this is a we may this is a perfect storm. We may never get this again. Yes, there are a lot of risks here, but we may not get this opportunity again. I feel that this is the Gaza situation, Hezbollah, Houthi, all of this is connected, and this is and there it's the clock is ticking.
Yeah,
How do you feel?
I agree with you, and I think the urgency is coming from I think there's a real cloud of uncertainty over the Trump presidency. He's failing in Minnesota. This is a very big thing. This is his signature
It's
issue.
huge, everybody. It's
His
huge.
signature issue, and he's not able to exert U.S. government, the sovereignty of the U.S. government in a state. Not the biggest state, not the most important state, but nonetheless, it's a Democrat-run state. A Democrat-run state is openly defying him, and he's not able to deal with the issue. So that means, if the Israelis are looking, this presidency could unravel very quickly. Leave
Shelf
aside
life. Shelf life. Yes.
exactly, leave aside the the impeachment, which is obviously coming. There's going to be a rush for the exits. I mean, one person after another is going to be calculating and saying, Trump is for the birds. He's failed. He's not in this administration.
Well,
he's not going anywhere. They're going to start moving out. And this is speculation. I think Trump may just step aside. I think he may just decide that it's not worth it. Continuing, who knows, about his health and so on. He just may step aside and leave, rather than go through impeachment after impeachment and just say, hey, you know what, I'm out of here.
well,
I think that's unlikely, but if you're an Israeli, you're thinking that's not impossible.
if you're an Israeli, that's what you're thinking, okay?
Right.
And just on the domestic issue, real quick here, the question is did you vote for this? And George is right. People are getting cold feet, okay, because they see the backlash. I mean, I am just beside myself with disgust by what I'm seeing. It's so unnecessary. Okay.
I think that's a different issue. I'm not.
No, yeah, shooting a man in the back.
Yeah. But that's still, there's an issue there about, hey, you never want to get yourself in between a law
Okay,
enforcement.
we'll talk about it later.
Well,
Okay.
exactly. So I think
You're shooting a man in the back 8
No,
times.
but he was
I rest my case. Okay.
No, you can't rest your case because
I do.
he was interfering in
I've
law.
noticed that we've kind of tiptoed around this the last
No,
two.
because you can't do it. I mean, it happens in any time. You basically
George, let's
you
continue
can
with this.
protest. Absolutely. Just to finish that off. Yeah, you absolutely have a right to protest. You don't have a right to intervene in law enforcement. And I think that's unfortunate.
Okay.
When that happens, you're taking your life in your hands. And
There's
so,
going to we'll disagree. We'll agree on the following.
but
No,
what?
let me just get my last point on this, and let's continue with Iran. This is a losing issue, and if it isn't rectified very, very quickly, it's going to have severe political consequences. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, yeah, but I would say it's a losing issue for Trump if he walks away. That's, I think, the problem. If he just essentially he cedes the ground to Waltz, Fry, Ellis,
No.
and they will come along and say, "Hey,
Trump needs to get rid of. He needs a knight of the long knives.
No, I disagree. When you start something, this is his signature issue. He promised. He didn't just say,
Filming law enforcement is not illegal. Okay.
What is impeding law enforcement is absolutely illegal. Absolutely illegal. Impeding law enforcement.
Supreme Court has ruled on it many times.
No, you are wrong. Yeah, you can protest. You cannot intervene in between.
You can film.
You can film. They're allowed.
That's what I said. That's all I said. You can film.
Oh, I see. I thought you said you can impede law enforcement. Yeah.
No, you can film.
You can film. But that wasn't the issue.
I saw the video, George.
You see the other video.
Let's not derail this.
No,
video.
I know, but what I'm saying,
if you want to after this video do it, I'm more than happy to do it.
Right.
But let's keep with
okay. But what I was saying is that you to just address your point, which was that the Israel is now calculating. They may not think Trump has a long shelf life. And I think that the issue in Minnesota, because that is now really where his presidency could well be decided. That, much more so than anywhere else, because that's his signature issue.
When George and I get up to 30,000 feet, we tend to agree.
Okay. All right. Anyway, so yeah, there's a, and then they could overturn the government. So he's just to return to this, to read this out, so because we got the sidetrack. To do so, he was looking at options to hit commanders and institutions Washington holds responsible for the violence, to give protesters the confidence that they could overrun government and security buildings, I said. One of the US sources said the options being discussed by Trump's aides also included a much larger strike intended to have a lasting impact, possibly against ballistic missiles that can reach US and Middle East, or its nuclear enrichment program.
George, is this magical thinking?
Right.
I mean, it's the way it's being presented here is that we get this step, that works, second step, it's everything is going to fall in place, everything's going to be just as planned, okay? And it's all out here on the whiteboard,
Right.
just boom, 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 and it
Right.
never works that way.
Right.
And the people that write these things should know that.
Yeah, that's right. And then it says 4 Arab officials, 3 Western diplomats, and the way, and old Uncle Tom Cobley and all, and a senior Western source whose governments were briefed on the discussions, said they were concerned that instead of bringing people onto the streets, such strikes could weaken a movement already in shock after the bloodiest repression by authorities since the 1979 Islamic Revolution.
Yeah, they're in
see,
shock, but I'm not sure they're weakened.
well, the weekend, I mean, yeah, I mean, they could absolutely come out into the streets, but a government that is facing a security crisis, they're under attack by the United States, would basically they would crush this movement with ease. They say, "Hey, we're in no mood we're in no mood to negotiate. We're in no mood to to deal with these rioters humanely. We're just going to use massive force." So the previous force was massive. This is really going to put that in the shade.
And this is martial law. Okay.
Well, that's right. It'll be martial law, and then when you have martial law, you can use whatever force you want. I mean, and that's right. And so that you were upset about these. So in other words, you're going to have exactly the opposite effect. I mean, if the goal is help is on its way, which Trump famously said, we're going to we're going to help the protesters. The last thing you're going to be doing by bombing Iran is helping the protesters. You are ensuring essentially a massive bloody crackdown.
Well, yeah, they've shown themselves to be these so-called protesters. They've shown themselves to be a fifth column, and no state responds kindly to that. No state.
No, never done that. And then we have a senior official, Israeli officials with direct knowledge of planning between Israel and the United States, told Reuters, Israel does not believe airstrikes alone can topple the Islamic Republic. If that is Washington's goal.
I mean, if that's whose goal? What's going on here?
Exactly.
Israel's
goal?
Talking about like it had nothing to do with us.
Nothing to do. Well, if that's your goal, I wouldn't necessarily want them.
I'm just going to chime in, my 2 cents here. Again, this kind of journalism just turns my stomach.
I know, that's right. And he so says, if you're going to topple the regime, you have to put boots on the ground, he said, noting that even if the United States killed Supreme Leader Khamenei, Iran would have a new leader that will replace him. Yeah, that's right. So then you think, well, what exactly is the Israelis planning? Sounds like they want a really massive operation. Because this is right. Assassinating one leader after another, that isn't going to change anything.
I think this is a good juncture to talk about what is very possible, in my mind at least, is a nuclear strike.
Right.
I just look, the Iranians have made it clear that if the U.S. uses force, massive force, Israel is not going to be spared.
Right.
And and what they experienced last year is only going to be how many more folds, okay? And that's what Israel will say it's existential.
Right.
We have to, and I'm really worried about that. And you know why? Because this will be the final solution. They will go to the very top of the escalation ladder and say we had no choice. They'll always say we
Right.
were the victim here.
Right.
I'm very worried about this, George.
I,
Because
I,
when I look
I
at
think it's a distinct possibility. Yeah,
when I look at
not far-fetched.
military, looking at reading and seeing various podcasts of serious military people, what Trump is thinking is it's not going to achieve very much except for a lot of destruction. It's not going to change the
No,
regime
that's right.
nature in Iran. It's going to really piss off enormous number of people. What happens if, little UAE? Oh, sorry, we destroyed your entire country in an afternoon.
Right. Right. But you see, that's the thing. I don't think Iran. The story, the theory that Iran's going to hit the UAE, Saudi Arabia. I don't think they're going to do that because they've basically been quite supportive of Iran during this time. So if Iran is going to retaliate, Iran will retaliate against Israel. I don't think there's any doubt
And
about that.
and I
Israel,
think
it won't hit Saudi Arabia. It won't hit the UAE. It won't hit
and it
Qatar.
might hit American military
Well, it
installations.
might hit an American military installation, but I think its primary target will be Israel, and therefore, because it's not that easy to hit American military installations. I mean, those are pretty well defended. So, but hitting Israel, I think is a much more doable. Um, but in principle, I think if this is going to be a massive attack on Tel Aviv, then I think Israel may well decide, hey, well, we now need to go for the nuclear option because we're under serious attack. Anyway, here is the Middle East Eye. U.S. wastes precision strikes on Iranian officials as military buildup surges. And then the U.S. is weighing precision strikes on high-value Iranian officials and commanders who it deems responsible for this, and then so on. And then the strikes could come as early as this week, but that timeline could shift. But they say discussions within the administration have been described as chaotic. And then, sorry, anyway, it goes on. The U.S. is now in a stronger military position to launch an attack on Iran than at the beginning of January. And that's obviously because they put the position in place. Trump has sent more warplanes, air defense systems, and battleships into the region. And the buildup appears to be reaching its peak, and so on. Now, it's still we're really back on the discussing the key issue here, which is since Trump hasn't really spelled out what he wants. I mean, just simply saying surrender on the part of Iran, that's not really an option. So therefore, it becomes very difficult to see what exactly he's trying to accomplish. I mean, what would he settle for and say, okay, well, this and this is satisfactory because Iran isn't going to just Iran's not going to give up all enrichment, and Iran isn't going to give up above all. It's not going to give up its ballistic missiles.
Above all, yes.
Yeah, therefore, it's hard to see. Trump is saying, well, I've got everything is in place with a view to what? And that's why one has to think, well, obviously they're planning on some kind of an apocalyptic scenario of regime change, which I think, as we've agreed, that's going to be no easy task. It's been tried before. They've been there for a long time. So then that means that's going to be a protracted war with Iran. That isn't going to be very popular in the United States. I mean, leave aside, his own base. I mean, we can put that separately, but it's not going to be popular with the United States. Hey, we are now in a protracted war against Iran for no obviously discernible reason.
Unless going back to my point, you can just put it to an end very, very quickly.
Well, then you have to,
What is it? What is the downside for Israel?
well, yeah, that's the
There's a lot of downside if the U.S. does it to Iran.
right.
Yes,
Yes.
but I mean, Israel is already, a pariah state for most of the world. So what? So I mean, the Iranians the Europeans are on our side. Okay. Oh, well, Israel had no choice. I can see the propaganda. They had no choice. They had no choice.
It's an interesting question. I mean, it's still, I mean, you still have to
You
say,
don't
okay,
like to go into the, thinking the unthinkable. I
it is.
know.
No, I agree. I mean, it's something one can think about. But the fact is that nobody has done this since 1945. So you say, okay, well, now you have done this. Now, what's the justification? Well, Israel was fighting for its very existence. Is anyone really going to buy that? I mean,
The Israelis will.
the Israelis will now well, I don't know. I mean, you kind of what you have to wonder how Israeli public opinion will think about the use of nuclear weapons. I mean, because it has had for 80 years. It's the one thing. It's the one universal red line that you never do this. That you never use this. And once you cross that red line, it's an interesting question. That who will deem it acceptable? Um, now,
And then what do you bet? 2 weeks later, Saudi Arabia will be a nuclear power because they'll buy it from Pakistan, and then you have this proliferation all through the world. Okay, I I'm the reason why I bring it up I bring it up because it's the only thing that kind of ties everything together is that, this is an opportunity. If it goes south, we have a pliant president in the Oval Office. The Europeans are backing. It's like, okay, everybody's in agreement. Okay, things start going south. Well, we have a solution for that. And then we won't have to worry about it again. Iran.
well, except that, of course, um, even if you do use a nuclear weapon, that absolutely doesn't guarantee that there'll be a regime change. You've just used nuclear weapons. You've killed a lot of people.
Yep.
But chances are that the government will survive. I mean, they probably have some kind of a
Oh,
nuclear bunker that they can
it's probably very
repair to.
decentralized and
Right,
prepared for this.
exactly. So you still have not accomplished anything other than enormous a number of casualties. And I also you have to wonder the radiation and all of those other aspects of it,
Yeah,
like how
where's it going to blow? Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
which direction it would. Well, but I think it's good that we should at least think about that as a possibility.
Overall, and what George and I have been trying to get at over the past hour is a very simple question. Why and why now?
Mm, yeah.
And, Israel wants to sit it out, or maybe will be a joint venture. But if it's going to be a joint venture, then it's going to be all out until whatever it takes. Remember the call for Ukraine, which of course is Donald Trump's worst nightmare. He's down in the polls, and now he got himself into a forever war with a country that has resources and resolve. Okay. Um, I'm just befuddled by it. And as I said at the very start, talking to people that I trust that are in the know and been right most of the time, they have the same opinion we have. It's kind of
Right,
inexplicable.
exactly. Um, well, that's really the interest. I mean, I think that if the United States does indeed attack, I think Iran really will have no option other than to retaliate against Israel. I
Of
think that's
course.
because Israel is, I think it'll be much easier to hit than I think American military hardware. I think that's probably very well defended. And so they probably have very strong anti-missile defenses. And, given, if you have limited resources, I assume Iran has limited resources, you're not going to waste it
Yeah.
against very strongly defended
I
targets. You're
mean,
going to hit
and if,
where I think which is much less strongly defended.
you know, Israel, we've talked over the years that, the Gaza is like a postage stamp, in geographical terms. It's a tiny area. Israel's a pretty small place too.
Right, right.
I mean, there, what, two major ports, a telecommunications hub, a refinery, a refinery. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
to wreck Israel with the capacity that Iran has, it's very, very doable. They told us that. They told the Israelis and the world that
Mhm.
last year.
Right,
Okay.
right, right. But then, but okay, then let's then think about that. I mean, I think that's what would happen, and then of course we really have it's going to be a real problem, particularly as what happened last June was that the United States stepped in and said, okay, well, we're going to call it quits, and that's the end of it. So now the United States is doing the opposite. Hey, let's start the whole thing up and then see what happens, which doesn't really make a great deal of sense. So okay, well, so that's why the whole thing doesn't make a great deal of sense. And then you say, okay, well, if that doesn't make any sense, um, what what would Trump settle for and say, hey, well, we have accomplished. I did this
Have
and
he?
I accomplished something.
Where's the wiggle room? It maybe tease that out. How can he not be Taco and come out without going to
That's
war?
where that's where it
How?
becomes difficult because um, if you say, oh well, look, hey, I've got Iran, well, I'm negotiating with Iran, but Iran has said, yeah, well, we've always been ready to negotiate. That hasn't accomplished. So it's very hard to see once you've put you've put all this hardware in place that what would you settle for and say, okay, yeah, I accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, I got Maduro, mission accomplished.
Yes,
Okay, well, what
exactly.
is the equivalent?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Because okay, I killed Khamenei. Okay, fantastic. I mean, somebody takes over. What have you accomplished? Now maybe he'll say, maybe he'll regard that as a great victory. Maybe say, yeah, okay, we killed Khamenei. We killed an 86-year-old man who's probably going to be who's going to die, quite soon anyway. So what have you accomplished? So so that's what makes us. I mean, maybe he'll kill the Iranian president. Okay,
Yeah,
he's not the person who's particularly
the
important there.
reformer, the
Yeah, the
reformer.
reformer, exactly. So you're gonna
Well,
okay. You'll kill Arakchi, the foreign minister. Okay, you've done that, and then
another
what?
guy
Yeah,
that,
then now someone else takes over. So that's what you're right. I mean, that was if you're using the Maduro model, then you say, okay, well, you got Maduro out. I mean, I'm not quite sure what that achieved, but at least you can say, yeah, we did that, we accomplished that, and Trump is touting this as a great victory. But it's hard to see where's the Iranian equivalent. You'll say, yeah, we did that, and this is a great victory. I don't quite see how killing Khamenei would accomplish that.
George, too. I mean, obviously it's tightly held secret, but with these ballistic missiles, I mean, if you can hit Tel Aviv, why can't you hit an aircraft carriers are pretty big.
Yeah, but they
From,
will
no,
defend.
but from what I've been to, yeah, okay, they're defended and all that, but these, we may have not seen the top shelf yet. I've been told it's very hard to sink an aircraft carrier. Okay,
Yeah,
you
it's
can
hard. I,
damage.
I just, I think that's probably a little bit. I find those things implausible when they say, "Oh, yeah, we can just simply go in."
Well, they're keeping
I
their
can sink an
distance.
aircraft
No, no,
carrier.
no, they're definitely keeping their distance. Okay,
Yeah,
they're
that's
not
right. But
inviting it. That's for sure.
those things have a lot of anti-missile defense systems. So they're not easy targets. I think
It's
that's
not
why
an
I think
easy
that
target.
I don't think
But
Iran's going to
no, no, no,
waste.
no, no. I didn't say it was an easy target. I'm just saying it might be a doable target. That's all. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. They're highly they have a lot of defenses, okay? But we don't know the level of capacity that the Iranians have. I have a very, very bad feeling. I feel like I'm Macron now, okay? Because yesterday I thought something, today I think another thing, because I'm trying to process all of this, because I'm trying to understand it,
Mm.
okay? And then the implications. I think the important insight from this podcast is George is right, is that the Chinese are, the Chinese, their impact on the global stage compared to what their capacity is, we're going to finally find an evening out, okay? Because there is no way in the world that China is going to allow the United States to short circuit the Chinese economy, in no way.
Right. No, I think that's right. But and that, of course, would be that would really put a dampener on U.S. plans against Russia, because I think then China will finally do something it should have done a long time ago. Give much more, much stronger support for Russia, which it hasn't done. So that really, if you want to avoid putting Russia and China together into almost a military alliance, this is guaranteed. Yeah, we now have to form a military alliance because we're really up against it. This is almost open warfare that the United States is waging against us. We need a military alliance to defend ourselves. So I think that is going to have a really disastrous effect for the United States.
Absolutely. Day by day, trying to figure this out is very, very difficult. I don't feel alone in that regard. A lot of other people are feeling the same thing. But I can tell you, George, the New York Times doesn't help.
No,
Okay.
no, no, no. Except except that they give you a sense of the bizarre nature of all of this thinking. Because let's remember, it suddenly came out of nowhere. I mean, we
Yeah.
thought that he did this thing in Venezuela, and I have to think, okay, you pulled it off. It was a limited operation. What the long-term consequences are, it's a separate issue. But in terms of the military operation itself, you pulled it off. And kudos to pulling it off. But now you're embarking on something that isn't going to be done. The Maduro solution just isn't going to work here. So that's what's so baffling about this. So as to why he's doing this, and
And
why,
and,
as I
and
say, coming out of nowhere, he sort of embarked on this, and particularly as he's got serious domestic issues to address at home.
well, all the more so, George, is that we all have a really good idea now of what Iran's reaction is going to be as a result of the 12-day war. Okay, so has that been baked in? Because in my mind, it certainly should raise eyebrows. Okay, they can defend themselves now, unless this is from way left field. But do they have a version of the pager strategy? Is there something like that?
Mm.
You know,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm still shocked by that. Okay,
right.
um,
But
but
then maybe, we that's a possibility that they have something like, pages, things that we're not thinking about. There's things that they've got up their sleeves that they're not revealing. And I think, you absolutely, we have to be open, because when we were talking about what's the end game in Venezuela, we were thinking, oh, he's going to start bombing, he's going to start hitting all sorts of targets in Venezuela, and we were baffled. Okay, well, how does that get you to regime change? And then they did something very different. So it is possible that they have things in the works, such as the pages or whatever that we're not really thinking about.
well,
However,
speak.
even that is going to be limited if I think we have to assume they are trying to remove the clerical regime in Tehran. So even that, if they try the sort of pager strategy.
Well, I mean, to end off, Trump has declared Cuba a national security threat of the highest order. And maybe, George, the Maduro operation, and we kind of danced around this is that it was always about Cuba, and it looks
Yes.
more and more so like it is.
Right, right. But that's Cuba. I mean,
No, but I'm just, pick off
right.
Venezuela
Yeah,
and then intimidate the Mexicans, and then
yeah.
Cuba is
No,
alive.
that's right. That's right. I think
And maybe that was the whole point.
yes. No, I think so. I mean, but I think we did think about that. That Trump wanted to really bring to an end all of those kind of this leftish
Well,
anti-American
no,
governments.
it's more than that. It's like in terms of Trump and his psychology. No other president did it except
Yeah.
for
No,
me.
no. I
That's
think
the
yeah.
communist socialist, well,
Yeah, no,
whatever.
I think that's right. Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, that's right. I mean, it was that he still has that in mind. I did what Eisenhower and Kennedy, Reagan all failed to do. So and yeah, he has that in mind. But that's Cuba. That how does that help you in Iran?
No,
So, yeah,
it doesn't.
yeah.
All right. So many others are anticipating what's going on. I don't. How many times, George, we read over the last few weeks, as early as this week? We've heard that over and over. As early as this week. As early as this week. Okay, but he's got to have to continue or pivot.
He's gonna have to do it because you've got everybody very excited, and so therefore either you're going to do something or you're going to have to come up and say, "Oh, well, here's a fantastic solution, and I've achieved a great victory." Um, so, but he certainly can't sustain this level of military presence without doing something.
And if the Iranians blockade
The
the
Straits of
Straits of
Hormuz.
Hormuz, I mean that's creating a political fact, okay? And then the shoe is on the other foot. The Iranians have a lot of leverage. What are you going to do then? Okay, I mean, eh, this we've George and I've been talking about it ever since the inception of this podcast. There's so many different scenarios out there. None of them are good. Okay, the problem we have right now is that Trump has invested so much into this. It's going to be very difficult. I cannot see a way out. I
No,
think
it isn't.
all exits are blocked now.
Well, that's right, because he has taken such a maximalist position. Because you know, if he'd have settled for a JCPOA 2.0, and he could have said, "Hey, I got a much better deal than
And
Obama
we
did."
would be in full support.
It was exactly, and that's what it seemed like, because that's what the goal was. And then of course he launched the attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities, and then out of the blue he suddenly said, well, he seized on the protests and said, oh, we have to intervene, and clearly suggested that he was going to use American force in the support of the protest. So that was completely opposed to everything they've been doing before, and that's what makes the whole thing so bizarre. Is that you've gone from one thing to another without really offering any explanation of why you've suddenly changed your objectives.
That's why I keep saying to everyone, the Greenland story isn't over. It isn't. It's still there. Okay. All right. Obviously, you can count on us to keep watching this. I'm again, keep checking in with people that I trust. It's a small group of people. Most of the stuff is just garbage, like the New York. God, I wish they would just go bankrupt, okay, and just go away. You're not helping. All right, everybody. This is a Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Local, so please go to the Gaggle.local. The dogs just stepped on my feet. They know it's coming to an end. Okay, this is part of our Friday wrap. And because I just felt some small paws going across my feet, it is an indication that George needs to talk up the tip jar.
The tip jar situation. That's what they're making clear, that it's very unsatisfactory. It's a crisis that needs to be rectified, needs to be addressed in you know, in a very narrow frame of
The clock is
reference.
ticking on this one too.
That's right. It's got to be, addressed like yesterday. So if you have anything lying around, any wads of $100 bills that you're not using, put it into the tip jar. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology, and above all, we're gonna be able to, finally win an argument against the dogs. We never win those arguments. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.